Are you ready to call it?
Just about. Just I just drew up. I'm gonna do this here. Oh, work. See what the video looks like. Just a little bit here.
Yeah. You want to turn around or you want to come to this side? No, yeah, with this side. Yeah. So it's. Desiree.
That's right.
There's Desiree. Yeah, good person too. Hi. And, we're just talking about, trying to get, should we all be on camera? I mean, I don't know what the etiquette is for.
We can do that if you'd like. I think we have most people covered. That's true.
Put your
Oh,
right
David.
here, let's get cozy here.
Why did you say here, Elvis?
You're gonna go backwards.
I made out on it.
It's like writing on the friends backwards. What you did? Very good. Okay. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. And let's just begin by introducing ourselves. I'm Mary Lou Nuttall. I am the chair of this Historic District Board.
Hi, I'm Dave Peets. Wasn't quite sure who I was introducing myself to, but everybody. Yes, also a member of the board and lived on this. Nice to meet you.
That's right. I'm the Historic Preservation Officer for the city of Tucson.
Dan Hill, member. Good morning.
And
Dan Bursick, I'm the planning administrator for Planning and Development Services.
Margaret?
Hi, I'm Margot Sackheim, board member. I've been out of state for a while. What else can I say?
Elaine Hill, and I'm an associate member, former member, and part of the overall Neighbor Association board.
And I need to know, can we go ahead and, since we have an audience member here, have them introduce themselves before the.
Of course.
Yeah.
Tom Allen, just visiting.
Excellent. Thanks for coming.
Great, okay, good. And then we'll go to our agenda. I did ask Tom if he wanted to have the call to the audience first, and he's happy to sit through our meeting, but it's not a very hefty agenda. First of all, we had minutes of 3/24 to read, but I couldn't find them to review.
I think we didn't get them posted.
Okay.
So we'll post those for next time.
Okay.
Yeah, that was our error.
Well, and I was thrilled to find that you could watch the Zoom of the meeting, and that really helped me reorganize for today.
Oh, good.
So.
Yeah, we've been posting all of those, so hopefully. Okay, yeah, we need to let you guys know that. I can send a link out to everyone so you can access
Because
those.
you all want to see what we've said.
Myself,
Okay. Okay, so one of the things that we've been discussing, and we've been working on the design review guidelines and trying to make sure that the new members have information about those, have input to them, and the old members as well. But one of the things that has come up is actually the procedures for a minor review versus a courtesy review. And thought that the first thing we should do is see from the city's perspective what that is for you all, and then we'll make sure that we comply.
So I did print out a few guidelines on our development codes that explain the process and the minor, what qualifies for a minor, and essentially anything that doesn't qualify for a minor requires a full review. So we'll go ahead and pass that out. Like,
Margot. Oh, do you want a copy, Jim?
I actually have a copy of myself. Right.
You can take that down and turn the lights on, or,
Feel better.
oh, it might be better, yeah.
um, Essentially all properties, buildings, signs and structures within a historic preservation zone require develop that or proposing development and improvements, including new construction or even some improvements that don't require building permits are required to go through historic preservation review. And so the first section goes through full HPZ review procedure. So this includes grading or direction of construction of a new structure, a permit for any alteration involving modification, addition, or moving of any part of an existing structure, including signs, repairs or new construction, the construction or enlargement of a parking lot within an HPZ or on a property containing a historic landmark. And then there are some exceptions. So installation of solar panels, cisterns, or installation and repairs to a roof for the minor HPZ process. And then on the second page, it lists the minor HPZ applicability. So these are pretty minimal, what would qualify for a minor review. So the total cost of such improvement is under $1,500. The repairs involve replacement with materials of identical or historically accurate design, size, and color to those being replaced. So your basic, in-kind, like for like replacements and repairs can qualify for minor HPZ review. And then emergency repairs for scopes that might normally qualify for fall under the full review, but that again is like for like replacement, and as long as it's an emergency, that can also be done through a minor HPZ review. The change in copy of a sign and any alteration that does not require a permit involving the modification, addition, or moving of any part of an existing structure that would affect exterior appearance. So these are fences, walls, certain types of fences, walls, and other alterations that the PDSD director. And like I mentioned earlier, installation of solar panels or cisterns or installation of a floor repairs to a roof.
Yeah.
So these guidelines are part of the city's guide for this. These are not in our purview to determine what these guidelines look like. Or if we wanted to make a change in these guidelines, is there any opportunity to go to whoever this board is to discuss what that could look like?
Yeah, so yeah, that's so it's kind of similar because this comes directly from the Unified Development Code,
Which is
our zoning code.
the
And so
city of Tucson.
City of Tucson zoning code, and this is section 588, I think. Is that right? Yeah. And so in order to make any changes to the Unified Development Code, there's a full process. It gets started by mayor and council. They usually do, study session. They'll say, go and make these changes. They'll tell staff to make those changes. And then we go through and usually we'll do some analysis. We'll draft up an initial kind of, proposal. We'll go out to the public, get feedback. And then it goes through a formal process, which goes through our planning commission, usually a study session and a public hearing, and then another public hearing with mayor and council before you can make any changes to this. I will say, I just want to point out one other thing. Is that one thing that we do also, we've done, this was a former determination by a historic preservation officer related to windows. And there is a threshold to where if you're over replacing more than 3 windows, even if they're like for like, it ends up triggering a full review. That's something we're looking at right now on whether or not that's necessary, but that was a determination previously from, I mean, I think that's probably going to end up with more than $1,500 for more than 3 windows. Yeah, so I mean, but that number, that 1,500 number as well is one thing that, probably when that was developed, things cost a lot less than they do now. So it's unfortunate it's in the code, but a code change would be required to go through and make a modification to that.
Any questions?
I don't know that we are, one thing that is on our to-do list is to create kind of one sheet, guides for people that are more, customer, friendly than say pulling up the, the code, zoning code. So with the one sheet that kind of outlines, bullet points, these certain types of projects that require full review, these types of minor reviews to make it easier for people to understand. So that is something that is on our to-do list. Another thing we're working on is a video to help guide people through the application process or online permitting system. So we're going to create a short video to show people how to, application, how to go through that.
Anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you say it's guidance for the windows that came from Susan and guidance, right? So is
Yeah.
that guidance anywhere published?
No, I think that's something that, again, will probably be a part of those materials as we develop those materials. I believe, I haven't seen the actual determination on that, but yeah, I think it was just a former HPO who was like, we need something to at least be concrete on how we're determining whether it's a major or minor, and the threshold was at 3. Because beyond that, it would be a larger kind of change versus, something with just a couple of window replacements.
Marco, I didn't mean to ignore you. Do you have questions about the minor versus the full review? You're muted.
Well, I was, and I've kind of lost the visual here, but no, I don't think so right now. I don't really have any major questions or anything.
Okay. Good. Okay, well, thank you, then. I think that helps give us clarity to some of the things we've been doing, but it also brings up a question that as we bring new members onto the board, that who does the training? And is there going to be like an annual training to be able to discuss these and things like that? I think we had one.
I believe about a year ago or so.
After COVID kind of really opened up again.
Yeah.
And we may have had some prior to that, but just wondered if there was something that would be resumed. It seems to fall into understanding some of these things better.
Yes.
So can we clarify the courtesy review? Because the courtesy review within the guideline, it's on the other guidelines that I've seen about encouraging an applicant to come for courtesy review to the board, but there's really no avenue to do that. There's no avenue to request that. And then there's also a recommendation to meet with staff for a pre-planning conference, right?
Yeah, so we will help you to set up a pre-planning conference if you want to. We do that. Related to a courtesy review, what you really ended up having to do is reach out to staff, and then we'll walk you through the process, which is basically you go in and you apply for a pre-application and you put your documents in there. And it doesn't have to necessarily. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's pretty much the way you do that, because we want to make sure that there are things are getting documented, they're getting put online. So it's, transparent and whatnot, but also, that allows for us to kind of keep track of things. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to submit a full design package. But at least enough information so you can review that, and provide some comments before they kind of continue on with their design.
And then does the courtesy review extend to the plan review subcommittee? Or is
They
it-
do, they'll also, if it's up to the applicant on whether they want to do that, but yes, we do courtesy reviews with plans review subcommittee. Unfortunately, they've been so busy, it's really hard to get to their agendas. I mean, they've been meeting two,
If,
3
if
times.
I have a project, so I have a
Mhm.
project and I start an application in the online tool. And then I see that there are steps. There are things I have to submit, photographs, site plan, things like that.
Mhm.
So I tried this because I need to do a project, right?
Yeah,
And I got through to that point where it wanted photographs.
yeah.
And I had to go out and take photographs. Well, I went back to the application, it was gone. Like, it was not there anymore, because
Okay.
I had saved it. But then it wasn't clear to me about whether the pre-planning application or the pre-application conference
Mhm.
with staff would trigger courtesy review with the board or not.
No, it's more to get like zoning feedback on how to be in compliance with zoning and things of that sort in the
Yeah.
code. So it wouldn't necessarily trigger that, but it's tied together to where you would have to request it. And then we would set that up for you.
And then you'd set it up on the agenda.
Yeah.
For the board.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I think it makes a lot of sense to do a courtesy review early on, just to get that feedback, because you don't want to spend all this money on the design and then realize you have to make all these changes.
Mhm.
So we do encourage people to do that. But yeah, that's, I
And are there fees associated with courtesy review?
don't believe so. I'd have to check and make sure. I don't think so. But I'll write that down and check.
How that system works, I am curious how she lost her.
I'm a little
information.
curious about that too. Yeah, I think we probably need, it's not just the minor versus major. There's probably a lot of educational documents and things of that sort that kind of walk people through this stuff. So it is, we're kind of coming up with a list of different things to kind of really help people through the process. And I think being more clear as far as what you need for a courtesy review, what you need for a regular review, how that process works, in very kind of graphic, understandable ways, I think is a good thing to do. It's something that we have on our list to do as well.
And then the other question I have relates to the instructions online on the website. The document,
Yeah,
is that still current? It was from.
should be, but I can check and make sure.
1 to 2, maybe.
That should be current, yeah, because I think we put that out when we switched over to our new permitting system, but I could check and make sure. I will say sometimes
Back month.
I appreciate that. Yes.
My application correct.
Well, no, wait, yeah, no, definitely please do that. That's really helpful. And I will say that sometimes we try to do a single document for many different processes. And all of the processes are like slightly different. And so you'll get these sheets and it has a list of like 25 things, and it's a lot of them say if applicable,
Right.
but
Yeah.
only 5 are applicable, and it gets kind of confusing for people. And so I think, looking at this from that lens and realizing that, maybe an influence out of district project or an NPZ is different enough to where we actually need a different document. And that's something we're also looking at too.
Anybody, anything else?
But yeah, Elaine, please let me know.
And following that right away is then again looking at landscaping practices. And we are looking at the considerations for a minor versus a courtesy review, recognizing that most landscaping doesn't take a full review, but it depends on what you're doing to the streetscape, I think that it does. And so is there anything specific to that in the? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, our code has very little on landscaping under the historic preservation ordinance. So all it says really is plantings and other ornamental features shall reflect the historic period of the subject structure. Landscaping may be reviewed in the context of a required HPZ review. Landscaping alone shall not be considered through an HPZ review. So in other words, if it's just a landscaping project, there's no, alterations proposed, new construction or grading, for, residential projects, we wouldn't review that landscape plan. For a larger project, so if they're building an addition or, doing something else, other scopes of work, and there's landscaping, then we review the landscape plan as part of that larger. So that's basically what the code says about it. In other areas for like public spaces within our downtown, for example, we do look at landscaping projects for commercial, more so like commercial institutional. But for residential, it's pretty, it really depends on the larger scope of work.
And who decides whether it's reviewed?
That would be our staff, the planning department staff, conservation. Our intake staff would start there, if they had questions about it.
Okay, so if somebody asks me a question about it, I just defer to them.
That's what I would advise.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it really does come down to the scope of the other work beyond the landscaping. And this is pretty consistent with our zoning code. Our zoning code really does, it has a lot of requirements for commercial development, but when it comes to like single family residential, we don't have requirements for landscaping and things of that sort unless it's part of a subdivision. So so really it comes down to whether or not you have, if you're putting in a retaining wall or you're doing other things, it's that other work that really triggers that review. And then that becomes part of the review when it comes through.
So in our design review guidelines, we do address landscaping, and I think it's not exactly the same verbiage that you've used today, but it's with emphasis for things that are native to this neighborhood. And
we got an accounting of that, right? More or less, we have a guide to what qualifies as native species. Is that right?
Well, it's not, I think the language is exactly the same. As, that it's not reviewed unless it's associated with a case.
so that while if somebody
And
asked
then if
me.
it is reviewed, it's reviewed according to
Right.
the plant books that we
Right.
recommend,
Right.
and the same recommendation language. Be consistent with the structure.
So what we do is try to make available to people in the neighborhood that written information before they get started. And especially as it impacts the streetscape before.
So it's not out of line, what's the spirit of largely the vegetation. Really dependent upon the larger scope of the project, right? I heard you say that our guidelines went a step further, that it wasn't so dependent on the scope of the other associated project. Right, did I hear that correctly, or?
I mean, I think that we are concerned about it,
Mhm.
and if somebody asks, we do go the next step, which is here's the information that we use. And do we tell somebody they have to? No, but we do try to guide them through that. And hoping that that's what happens. I think that you comment you at one point, you asked what's not allowed in my backyard and what's not wanted, and I think the one thing. Remember, you told me something, oh, palm trees, that's that palm trees would probably not be liked by the neighborhood, but I don't think it was because you were well, I don't know if you were considering palm trees.
We were, we haven't. Actually, I take that back.
See,
We had some, like a single palm. That same palm that came, is, might be about this high,
it's a bush.
which basically means that since nobody can see into our backyard from a public thoroughfare, it was my understanding, that's not an issue.
Well,
If I put a 40-foot palm in the backyard, then that could be seen from a public thoroughfare.
And we still wouldn't be in our purview. That was, but as guidance, that's what I would say. Okay. Okay. Anything else on these landscaping considerations? No, Margo? Anything
Nope.
else?
No.
Elaine held from the Neighborhood Association an update on the Mesquite Bosque. And the Mesquite Bosque is an historic feature in the neighborhood. Okay. And would you, I don't know that everybody knows
What I did.
what you
I
did
didn't
and
do
what
it.
you found
I
out.
responded to it.
And there's some follow-up that I don't know about. I did attend the meeting, but
So the Bosque, and I should have brought that up, but I can just describe it. Goes from the Pantano across Craycroft, through the neighborhood, through the historic zone, sweeps back up and hits the Reed. And it's a historic Bosque. It's actually in our inventory, in our historic district inventory. And two of the developments, after 1980, there were two developments that were built right in that Bosque. One of them has CCRs that require an ecological consultant before they cut any trees, or they remove any trees. And it's supposed to come back to the neighborhood association and to maybe the fire department or something before they, if you're gonna remove a lot of trees, for example. And then the adjacent neighborhood is worried about fire. So they were trying to cut trees. They were trying to remove a lot of dead down trees and limbs. So we had a meeting with those HOAs and their association, historic representative, to talk about that, because it's a feature, it's a big feature of this neighborhood. It's distinguishing the neighborhood. And what came out of that was to try to find a consultant to talk about that, but it comes up as a historic topic because if the second neighborhood had gone through and removed all their trees, it's removal of historic asset. We've also talked about trying to get that area listed as a cultural landscape, historic cultural landscape, on the National Register, but that requires quite a bit of work. So what we're doing is we're trying to approach it from the other direction and say, think of the ecology. You're actually exposing the area and these homes to more fire danger if you remove the trees and leave the dirt, and you start getting invasive species of grasses and buffalo grass and things like that.
So has there been vegetation, have there been trees already cut down?
A couple, yeah, until I went out and yelled at them. But,
I'd like to admit that actually.
yeah,
I scared the workers away.
Yeah.
they have.
Well, good for you.
And that's the topic, I mean.
Well, and part of it is the water rights. Someone getting the water rights to the ditch restored, the water rights are present, but getting the water restored back into the ditch, which is what's been feeding those trees for about 100 years, 125 years. And because of the drought, it's not, you're not getting it. And there is somebody who owns the water rights, who's willing to help with the repairs. And there's a push to look to see if there are some other ways of getting water, since we may be in a long-term drought, through reclaimed water from the city at some kind of.
So again, it's mostly
Reasonable
about
cost.
education and, you know, recognizing the cultural landscape, recognizing the historic landscape. And then Dan went off to the historic, what is that?
Or landscape, so,
Subcommittee of the
Mhm.
commission,
so,
talk to them.
yeah, this was sort of motivated by, you know, the book itself and some of these, you know, the questions that have been brought up regarding landscape in the neighborhood and, you know, what do we do if, you know, a 200-year-old mesquite tree is about to be cut down? And is that something we want to be able to look at? Is it something we should look at? Is it something that, and so, a lot of the discussions, they're actually in the process of sort of reviewing what the historic landscape subcommittee is in the process of reviewing what they define as, you know, historic landscape features and what are the characteristics that, you know, create a historic landscape. And, you know, two words from that meeting were sort of striking to me, and that is places of memory and identity. So places of memory, places of identity. And I think, you know, the latter being critical within Fort Lowell, right? What makes Fort Lowell, right? And can we define some of those characteristics that makes Fort Lowell from a landscape perspective? If so, you know, what do we do to protect those if need be, and what do we do to make those? Should those be a part of our discussions, right? And or do we leave it to the historic landscape guys, and you know, do they take care of that? Yeah, there's a lot more from that meeting, but that's kind of the gist, is that they're having these discussions as well, just to try to define what would be what would be necessary to review landscapes as historic areas.
And I'm gonna ask the same question. This commission, what is it, the
Tucson Team Historic Commission.
Tucson, Pima County?
And right now they review primarily public landscapes like parks
It is.
and commercial, I don't know if commercial, but historic commercial. probably.
So it's the Historic Landscape Subcommittee of the Tucson, Pima County Historical Commission, okay.
It's a long name.
Well, some good work.
Yeah, so they
Yeah.
invited me to the next meeting, and, you know, keep just sort of testing the water as far as what their ideas are and what they're looking to do in the future. And how that might involve us or not, but yeah.
I would think that it would also include things like conservation easements.
Right.
Like here, there's a conservation easement on this entire
Right.
property,
Right.
and I have had them come over and give advice about the landscape there.
So one thing that we noticed, so we looked a little bit into that development and the rezoning when the rezoning came through, which was in, I think, 98.
Mhm.
And you may be aware of this, but there was a condition that required a conservation easement over the bosque and that whole area as well. And so there's there's an memorandum of understanding that we found. We're still looking for the actual conservation
I
easement.
didn't know you guys had even looked at that.
Mhm.
Did you get a call from somebody about it? Or?
No, we knew that we were talking about it
Oh,
tonight,
okay.
so I wanted to take a look at it and just kind of check and see. And so I think there's not only protections, obviously, through the HPC, but I'm not sure what the terms of that conservation easement are, but I think some of those as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they're obviously legally required to adhere to. So that's something we are looking into, and we'll try to share with you as soon as we're able to find that.
Another place where that applied is that there's a trail easement from
Mhm.
Fort Lowell to the river, basically,
Yeah,
and that's an easement to the neighborhood association.
yes, I think actually I saw that condition in here as well. Yeah, so there's two easements. I just need to figure out, look back through our documents and try to find this.
Yeah, that would be really timely.
Mhm.
Thank you for doing.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
It's really be fun to hear more about and to understand better. Because we know that part of the ownership of that easement belongs to one of the developments. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's on private property, but the easement, I think, was given to the old Fort Lowell Neighborhood Association.
The
Yeah.
trail, but was it for
It-
the, and I think for the building?
I think it was for both, yeah. Mhm.
So is that component that's directly behind you and just south of
That's no
Presidio?
farm, that's actually not part of that conservation.
It's not, that piece that Hill Farm owns is not part of it.
Right.
Yeah, part is that.
It's, well, it's the part, like, the lane where they were cut trees. So it's kind of catty corner to my house. And, so if you go down Presidio to the end and look to the south, you see that there's an area. And I personally can't figure out why those trees in particular have died when, or are dying like they are, when the other trees around it, they're not in great shape, but they're still alive. So I can't, it has, we're hoping that the arborist that they bring in
Can help.
Yeah.
Is a
to look
urban forestry.
to look at that to see how, where the water runoff is going, because they must have done something to change the drainage, and we just don't understand it. Anything else on the Bosque? Anything? for Nominating members, that's the next item. We've kind of put that on hold. We do need to remember that as we request people to consider coming onto the board, that they do need to attend a couple of meetings to see how the processes work. Because I think that it's hard enough to learn on the fly, but mostly you need to know what's happening in this meeting to better understand what your job responsibilities might be. And otherwise, we've kind of got two candidates that we'll be looking at. I think both are either anthropologists or archaeologists. So. Okay. Okay. And then a call to the audience.
First of all, I'd like to thank the historic board for all the work they've done with me. I have no complaints with you guys at all. We've been over backwards.
You want to sit down, stand up? or-
I'll just stand up. I'll just
Okay.
say that you've all been over backwards to help us. We've new to the neighborhood 2 years and 4 months roughly. And we took on a project that had a few items that needed updating. That 76-page real estate inspection report was just a start. And like I said, I have never had a problem with you. You've always responded quickly, and I thank you. I hope that someday I can have the city do the same. I know you're new. I hope that we can meet and maybe discuss some of the issues I have. I do have one little problem right now, and that is the city has issued stop work orders. Want me to jump through hoops on things that have already been built, etc. Again, I have never had anybody from the city that wanted to work with me. They have turned down requests for meetings and etc. So it'll be interesting moving forward. I do hope that somebody at the city in the planning department would like to at least meet and talk with me. In the meantime, I have requested,
So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm supposed to recuse myself of this because Tom and I do some work together, so I'm gonna ski down.
You can leave, but we're
Yeah.
not voting on anything.
you're not
or
voting on
sharing
anything.
So, or sharing any
All you gotta do is be quiet.
Well, but no, I think that as long as we're not voting on
Yeah.
anything, that our processes. And if there were something on the table that
Agreed.
we might have to do, then I think Margot also might have to recuse because she's
She's
next.
my neighbor.
She's next door, so I think that we don't have a quorum and we're stuck.
I'll just say that, I have requested from the historical all the landscape reviews, whether it was a courtesy, a full review, whatever. Because I would like to see how the other people in this neighborhood, which I think most of the people sitting at the table, other than two Tucson people, live in the historical zone. So I would like to see how they have presented their landscaping. Because apparently landscaping means that if you plant a plant, you have to have that plant reviewed, or at least that's the interpretation I am taking from code enforcement. And therefore I would like that. If you cannot provide that to me, it's not an issue, because I can use the Freedom of Information Act to ask the city to provide it.
Well, all the minutes are online, first of all, and so you can go back to review the minutes. I'm trying to think if there was any specific case that where we looked at landscape. I know we've always had some, like the trees at the park that just
I'm
went
not
in.
worried about the trees at the park. I'm worried about people's backyards.
We don't have any say about
No,
backyards.
that's not true, Nina.
The
We did
the
review-
city says they do.
We did review heaters, we reviewed 5259. Probably reviewed Alan Scott's. I can't remember. what the number of Alan
Like I
Scott's.
said, I just want to be treated the same as everybody else.
What was done at 5259?
Across the street.
Yeah, so what ends up happening is that if you're getting reviewed for other things other than landscaping, that's when the landscape has to be shown on your plan when you come in and it gets reviewed.
Yeah.
And so it's other things that trigger the landscape review. It's not specifically landscape.
And I am very well aware of different people in the community that have done things in their backyard. I'm just wanting to see those reviews.
If they didn't have anything else that triggered it, they would have never had to get reviewed.
I am saying that they had other things that triggered it.
Do you have certain houses that you're thinking? I'm guessing,
I'm not, I'm not here to turn my neighbors in.
So did you?
Yes, somebody turned me in.
I'm a little bit confused about, so did the desire to review your vegetation, was that contingent upon other projects?
I am sure that that is part
Right,
of
is
it.
that's how I'm understanding.
And I'm
When
just
I said
saying that I know
review tree,
Yeah,
other
there's other
people
things
that
that trigger
put
it, yeah.
patios in and
Things like
did
that.
landscaping plants at the same time.
Right, but I'm asking, was that the situation with your?
If the city would talk to me, I'd have a much better answer.
So we did.
And
really,
when I'm saying that I have tried, that's a partial printout of things that I have discussed either with the city or with this group. And that's not complete. I'm still going through the ones that I have gotten with city. Now, I will also tell you that I gave up on the city back in, I think it was August of 24. But if there is somebody at the city that wants to talk to me, I am always available. I have not hidden one thing that I have done to our house. I have sent out multiple letters to different people on different boards. And I never got one reply. I have also sent multiple emails. Let's face it, I've got 4 emails right now that are outstanding in the last 2 weeks that nobody from the planning department responded to.
So
I-
first of all, I'm happy to meet with you. And I, did contribute to the response to the email that you sent with the list of the scope. So, so yeah, it was our code enforcement team that responded, but I provided the information to that as well. So, yes, I'm more than happy to meet with you and help you go through the process, because it sounds like you might already have potentially what you need. Maybe we just have to go through the application process.
Am I hearing you say that you will meet with me?
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Yeah, we can talk about it. Yeah.
In addition, on our website, we do have all of the agendas and all of the cases that have been reviewed by this board. And so you can go back and look at other full reviews, and those other full reviews should have landscaping,
Can I do a search, landscape review?
but that nothing's
So you're
searchable
telling
by
me-
landscape.
See, it's easier for me to go to the city with the Freedom of Information Act and ask for it specifically. This is what I want, because then you have to go through all those meeting minutes to find out what may or may not have been a review, rather than me spending my time doing it.
I mean, I can send you all of those cases that all have some minuscule reviews or landscaping, but almost everything has probably some landscape to it. It's just not, we don't have like a filter by landscape, so it would be, I'm not entirely sure how easy it is to actually find those cases, but it sounds like you have some pretty good examples of it.
Just saying
Yeah.
that
I mean, we definitely want to help, like, I'm just saying, like, we want to help you.
I'm just saying that my use of your website has been a total disaster and has required city help to even get me in it because I was locked out. Yes, it's all documented in emails. I did make or at least one mistake. I noted that, quote, it took 45 minutes, and when I went back and checked the documented email that I wrote on it, I stated it only took 30 minutes. And that was the third time that I had to sign up for it.
Yeah,
So.
we're happy, if you do run into tech issues and things of that sort, I mean, reach out to Desiree or myself. And we'll make sure that we can walk you through any of those issues. I know that there was an issue, there was a portion where you had gotten on there, you had applied to actually come to this board. That's correct. This was back in
Yes. July, August.
October or something. Maybe it was July, August. I don't think the documents got uploaded properly. I know we were trying to get you to upload those documents. I know there were issues with it. If you run into problems with anybody and any staff, or even just the or even just the program, I'm gonna give you my card. Desiree will, I don't think she has cards yet, but she's only been here a couple of weeks, well, a month, actually. Is today a month? Today might be a month. I'll give you my card, reach out to me. I'm happy to walk you through that stuff or find someone who can fix those problems for you, okay? We don't want to be the people obstructing kind of progress on this stuff or projects that they're doing. I mean, it's important for you to be able to do that. So I just want to be clear with that.
And I think, Tom, I think one of the things, that you are in a situation where some things need to be done pretty quickly here. That you've got, I think, trees to plant and some things that you really wanted to finish and get in place. Is there any kind of time frame that you can provide Tom, to be able to meet with them? And that way, we will all feel like things are moving ahead. Yeah.
Me next week.
So,
I'm always available, I'm retired.
Okay.
and then I'm gonna get with Elaine and see if we can come up with some of the addresses for the places that have had, we know that the schoolhouse and the new house, we had not this, we both had planting on them. And they didn't add plants, it was what they were going to remove more than anything. You think heaters? And
There's
so we'll get those
Very
and
good.
then we'll get.
Based on what code enforcement sent me, based on what was written, I believe by you, Desiree, it is my understanding that if you are within the historical area of Fort Lowell. If you are doing any kind of landscape planting, it has to have a full review, at a minimum, a minor review, to make sure that those plants meet the criteria that's in here. That's all I'm saying, is that's how I interpreted what code enforcement told me to do.
Okay.
Now, I am glad to meet with people and go over what I'm planning, but you know what? My guess is I will be planting in my backyard, which is you cannot see my backyard unless you walk up to the automatic gate and you are at least 5'6" in height and look over, and then you can only see less than a quarter of my backyard. I have a feeling I will be planting things back there to the day I die. Therefore, do I have to come back and get a bloody review every time I buy a plant and bring it in to put? Now, I've already said to the historical people and got a review that was a minor review or a courtesy review on my front yard. And I said I would comply. Matter of fact, when we moved in and bought the house, I wrote an email. They said, I will comply to this plant list in my front yard because that's observable from Fort Lowell Road. And I have. But I am now being told that that wasn't good enough. We have to have the city review it.
I will say this, a minor review, I looked back, I didn't see an actual minor review in our records.
No,
Um,
there was he
Courtesy review.
he invited me over to review his plans, to look
Okay.
at what was there, so it was truly a courtesy of a neighbor.
Mhm.
And it was a good conversation. So it never, that was after his first attempts to try and upload those plans, and that's
Mhm.
where that stalled.
Okay.
So I think that this is the solution that we needed, and Tom, I'm sorry, from me, that it has taken this long to get to be at a point where you're going to get the assistance from the professionals that can help make sure this goes smoothly here on.
Like I said,
So I really apologize, Tom.
That's Mary Lou, it's never been your issue.
Well,
You've been the help,
well,
and I'm asking for help, and this is what I'm going to get.
I hear it too.
No
But
stuff.
can we clarify that? I mean, that,
Yeah,
what Tom just said is
right,
is
so,
not true, that he would not have to get a minor review
No.
for every plant. he plants.
no, yeah, it's when there's other scopes, so the wall, I think there was like, I don't know.
It was a Ramada, I think, and then there were, yeah.
Yeah, so it's when there's structures.
Mhm.
Being built, then, and if there's landscaping happening at the same time. So if, for example, you were doing your landscaping project separately, down the road or beforehand, that wouldn't have triggered planning department review, so that wouldn't have triggered our review of the landscaping plan. So that's how our code is written, that's just the interpretation from the code, and I think that's been the precedent as well. But in the future, if we want to plant plants, nobody, at least from the city, we're not going to be, monitoring every area plant, whatever, so it's really just part of the list. But I'm happy to sit down with you and
Thank you.
go through that, so,
Mhm.
yeah, afterwards.
What was, I've always been a little bit perplexed, and I still am. Why would a review of plantings only happen when it's an adjunct of some other construction, let's just say? I mean, what's the rationale there?
I can't say that I understand the
It's
exact
just
intent of
planting stuff
what
with
they,
it.
of why they did this, when they did it. One thing that I think is part of that reason is just because, again, people should have the ability to, plant their yard and change a tree out or some, put in some bushes, things of that sort. I think the idea is that if you're putting in like hardscape, there's going to be plantings that go along with that, and it's at a larger scale. And it's something that has a bigger impact, and I think that's
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that, yeah, again, I mean, you can do a
Over-
lot of, yeah.
Trees.
Mhm.
I recently learned of an example where there was a wall that was gonna be built, and that wall would have required the, removal of
Right,
a tree, of a mature tree. So,
Mhm.
our plans review subcommittee made it a condition of the wall that they keep that tree, so the wall was sort of changed, so
Mm.
some of it might be less about what's gonna be planted, more about
Mm.
preservation.
Mm.
I personally have 54 velvet mesquites in my backyard. 4 olive trees, 3 eucalyptus, of which 2 are different species, 1 Australian bottle brush tree. And then in the front yard, I've got another 14 velvet mesquites, and I've got 1 velvet mesquite in my pantry. All I can tell you is I don't think I have been desecrating my house.
No.
I'm sorry that it's been so difficult for you. Hoping to help at this
This point is difficult for all of us.
point.
So that's why I would ask if we can find a way to help. And I've offered to help many times, and I'm happy to help. If I can type the words in for you, Tom, I will.
Elaine, it's not your issue.
No, I know, but
I've already interrupted Mary Lou's vacation in London. You have spent hours with me, and it's time that I work with the city.
Yeah.
Because right now, the only person unhappy with me is the city.
And I think the planning folks are ready to go for it, and Tom? You come back. Okay, anything else?
That's it.
We're underway, we've got a commitment, I appreciate, thank you so much, both
I
of
thank you both also,
And I thank you for bringing it here, Tom, because
because personally, you two are not the ones that started this disaster. Matter of fact, at least one of you is probably replacing somebody that had a lot to do with it.
I think we've got a good team. So I think, and I feel that not just for you as an individual, but also for our board. I mean, we have so looked forward and have so appreciated the support that we've gotten and feel like we can move better with the city instead of in opposition to the city. So.
Yeah.
You should probably say it better.
No.
Very nice.
So,
Thank you both.
anything else?
So,
The only other thing we have is what we would like on future agenda. Tom, I would like a feedback opportunity for you on our agenda for next time. Or in 2 months or something.
how about your 2 meetings from now?
2 meetings from now, this is.
I'll show up at the next one, if things don't go well.
Okay, well, in the audience. And
Yes,
that'll be in June. Okay, so Tom to the June meeting.
I think the design guidelines have to come back after we get
Design
review. We can start with the changes that were already recommended.
for next meeting.
Yeah,
We can do that.
We
We
can
can
talk through
start.
some of that on our side, and then there's probably one more round with PRS. I think. And I
And
think that you'll need another city review on the design guidelines. After we revise.
Probably after we revise, we'll
Recommendation.
probably take another look at it, but I don't know if it's gonna be.
and I would like, to see if we can get some people to come in and observe the meeting for being on board, because this is a pretty small board.
We could revisit those 2 agenda items too.
And you'd like to revisit the,
We'd be in process of landscape stuff. So,
well, and I
After
think
some more
Briggs,
thought
and
some
after
more,
Briggs
yeah.
is here back too. And really would like to For the historic district board. And I think you're a wonderful associate, but. Currently in Michigan.
Doesn't mean anything in my life, so.
Hasn't been anything, but anyway. Very good. Anything else? Anything?
I don't think so.
Margot, anything?
No,
Okay, I'd like to adjourn this meeting. Woo.
Great.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
I know what came out of my mouth, but I meant I was going to say, I'll second that, you know, I guess we don't need to.
Doesn't hurt.
Thank you. Thank you.